Hey everyone, in this video, a close look at the Teravail Honcho tire, an all-around trail tire that promises to offer the best performance in the broadest range of applications. Now just to be clear, I bought these tires full retail, and I'm not affiliated with Teravail in any way. Now for starters, Teravail is a relative newcomer to the bike tire market and has some serious competition in a pretty saturated market, but they've undoubtedly been gaining traction, pun intended, with their tire offerings for mountain and gravel bikes, and they have a pretty impressive range of tires within each discipline. Now the Honcho tires that I'm reviewing here represent an all-around trail tire, and I've got them on my 2018 Santa Cruz Hightower LT on some relatively new Hunt trail wide rims. Now I'm running a 29 by 2.6 up front and a 29 by 2.4 in the rear, all set up tubeless, and I've got a couple hundred miles on them so far, which isn't a ton, but certainly long enough to share my experiences so far. Now the first thing to note is that many of their tires, maybe all of them actually, come in two casings, a strong durable casing with built-in flat protection and their light and supple option meant to reduce weight and to be as compliant as possible. Now I kind of gambled on these tires and went with the light and supple option since I always appreciate the ride feel of lighter weight tires, and to be honest, I've never cut a sidewall on a set of mountain bike tires. So far, after a couple hundred miles, these Honchos are going strong, but I also don't ride super rocky, razor sharp trails, and I ride with a spare tube and tools in case I need to boot a cut sidewall. And also, I don't really mind doing trailside repairs if absolutely necessary. So far, I've had zero flats, and only on a couple of occasions I've had several small thorn punctures self-seal while riding. So all this to say, basically zero issues to date. Now as for the weights, these tires weigh in at 921 grams for the 29 by 2.4 and 963 grams for the 29 by 2.6, which is surprisingly light for tires of this volume. Now with mountain bike tires, it's always a balance between flat protection and weight, and these tires are certainly biased towards lighter weight and less protection. Now mounting them and setting them up tubeless was pretty straightforward, and I had no issues getting them up and running on a new pair of Hunt trail wide rims. Now I'm planning to do another video highlighting the Hunt wheels, but in total I managed to drop 380 grams or 0.83 pounds from the entire wheel set, which was surprising and certainly noticeable while riding. Now as far as how the Honchos perform, they honestly do pretty well almost everywhere, and they definitely roll much faster than the stock Maxxis Minion DHR2s that I'm used to, but of course they're a totally different class of tire, with the Honchos being a faster rolling trail tire and the Minions being a bona fide chunky enduro tire. Now so far, I found that in most scenarios, the Honchos provide adequate grip for my local trails, which mostly consist of dry hardpack and some chunkier and rockier sections as well. Now we ride everything from flat green trails to some pretty challenging black diamonds, but nothing too razor sharp and nothing super steep. Now for you locals down here in Southern California, the upper limit on the trails that I ride are like the Luge down in Trabuco Canyon and Chutes Ridgeline in Santiago Oaks. Definitely considered black diamond trails, but totally manageable on these tires. Now in general, I've been really happy with the tires so far, with the exception of two scenarios. The first being in really wet and muddy conditions, which honestly I don't find myself in too often down here in Southern California. Now on the rare muddy ride, I found that they pack up pretty quickly and you end up sliding over top of the mud rather than digging in. However, in damp conditions where mud buildup isn't really a problem, they actually do pretty well, mostly I think because of the relatively soft compound. And also, we don't typically ride in heavily wooded areas where slick tree roots can really be a challenge when wet. Now the second scenario in which these tires aren't optimal is on fast, loose over hard sections and loose off-camber turns. Now obviously these scenarios are really a challenge for any tire, but with the more closely packed knobs on the Honcho that make it a fast rolling tire, you also get more sliding on top of the dirt rather than digging in and gripping. With an enduro tire like the Minion DHR2, there aren't any transition knobs between the center tread and the outer knobs, so it places more pressure on the outer knobs when cornering, and so you generally get better cornering grip on this type of tire. Now with the Honchos and many similar trail tires, you get the additional transition rows of knobs, which help provide grip in less extreme cornering scenarios. Now the drawback, of course, is that during hard cornering, there's just more knobs contacting the ground, meaning that each individual knob can't dig as far into the dirt. Now, thankfully, the resulting sliding or drifting is really pretty predictable. And even though I generally don't like when the front tire slides, when it does, it's pretty easy to control and bring the bike back under you. Now for the record, I've had a number of close calls with losing front traction where I normally wouldn't while on the Mini DHRs, but I've never actually crashed as a result of a little front end drift. Now the rear, on the other hand, I'm totally okay and used to some sliding, and it hasn't been a problem at all on the Honchos. Now again, since I'm coming from the Maxxis minions, this isn't a super fair comparison. It could very well be that as trail tires go, the Teravail Honchos are optimized within their category. Now unfortunately, since this is a small channel, I don't have the wherewithal to test the whole range of tires within the same category, but as a standalone data point, I will say that I've been pretty happy with the Honchos so far. And I also do like running the 2.6 up front with the 2.4 width in the rear. Now as far as downsides, I don't have any complaints yet. I've got 0 flats so far, even on the light and supple casing. Now the tire feel is much nicer than the heavier, stiffer DHRs, and while I was a bit on the fence of going tan wall on an obnoxiously green bike, I have to say that they're growing on me. Also, they're available and in stock, which in 2022 is certainly a consideration. Now if I were to change anything, I may eventually swap the front tire with a slightly more aggressive tread just to mitigate the front end drift a bit, but it's nothing pressing, and I've actually kind of gotten used to it and can pretty well predict how the tire will behave in almost every scenario. Now I love the weight reduction, and the combination of these tires plus the new wheels have really livened up the bike. It definitely feels quicker and snappier than in its stock form. Now overall, I would say that I'm really happy with these tires, and I would definitely recommend them for someone who isn't a dedicated enduro or full-on downhill racer, and who spends most of their time on blue and maybe some black runs with the occasional rowdy rock garden thrown in for good measure. Alright, well that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you're interested, you can check out Teravail's website for more information on these tires down below. I have to say that as tire websites go, Teravail is actually pretty good about presenting information and making all the info readily accessible. So definitely check it out if you want to read up on these and their other tire offerings. Thanks again for watching, and thanks again for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.